So for example number 4, we're going to revisit our old friend, the 45-45 triangle. Remember that this is 45 degrees, and on the 45-45, this is 1 square root of 2. And we're asked to identify the 3 trigonometric functions. So find the following. So katoa. Okay. And so that means that sine of 45 is equal to the opposite, right? Sine, opposite, hypotenuse. Cosine, actually let me write this down here, it'll be better. Cosine of 45 is equal to cosine adjacent over the hypotenuse, adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then tangent is equal to the, I don't know why I wrote that all capital. Tangent of 45 degrees is equal to the opposite over the adjacent. So in order to find all of these, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to label what's the opposite, what's the adjacent, and all that stuff. So for this one, we know that across from the 90-degree angle is always the hypotenuse. The side across from the angle that we're using, 45 degrees, the opposite side is over here. And the remaining side is adjacent. So sine of 45 is going to be the opposite, which is 1 over the hypotenuse, which is the square root of 2. Now that has a numerical value, but we don't want to leave a square root in the denominator. So one thing about fractions is you can't have a 0 in the denominator, and you can't leave a square root in the denominator. The reason for this, the reason you can't have a square root here is because you might have what we call an imaginary or complex number. And so we always do this thing called rationalizing the denominator. In other words, I'm going to multiply the denominator by the square root of 2, remembering that whatever I do on the bottom, I also have to do to the top. So when I do that, 1 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 2, and then the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just going to be 2. So if you don't believe me, let me show you on the calculator real quick. So the square root of 2 squared, so I would do second. Oops, I don't want that. I don't want that one. Oh, I keep hitting the wrong button, that's why. So the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just going to be the base 2. Okay? So when I square a square root, the square roots undo the squaring. So that's just going to be 2. Now, cosine of 45 is actually the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which is just going to be 1 over the square root of 2. Again, I want to rationalize the denominator. I'm going to multiply this by the square root of 2. What that does is it gives me 2, and then 1 times the square root of 2 is 2. And then tangent of 45 degrees is just going to be the opposite over the adjacent, which is just going to be 1 over 1, which reduces down to 1. And that's that. That's example number 4.